The United States is suddenly looking for a de-escalation with Russia. According to the US, the war in Ukraine has reached an inflection point. Now, it is time to put an end to the war with talks and diplomacy. But Ukraine doesn't want to talk to Russia. It thinks it can decisively defeat Russia and push Russian troops out of all captured territories, including Crimea. So, the US is now talking tough with Ukraine and making some things very clear to Volodymyr Zelensky's. The US has told Ukraine that it needs to be realistic about its objectives, meaning it can't make wild claims of the kind it has been making. For example, the US has indicated to Ukraine that retaking Crimea from Russia is off the table. It's a non-starter and won't happen. And then the US has begun seriously pushing Ukraine to consider talks with Russia. That's a subtle way of the US saying it now wants Ukraine to negotiate with Putin's Russia. The most important statement that marks a serious attempt by the US to de-escalate tensions with Russia has come from US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. She has said that some sanctions on Russia could remain in place even after any eventual peace agreement with Moscow. What that means is that if a peace deal is struck, it would include a significant chunk of Western sanctions against Russia being lifted. It's all been very sudden. The US has so far poured in $19 billion in military aid to Ukraine, and all of it has been coming from the US military inventories. Consider this. Before the war in Ukraine, US weapon inventories looked something like this. Now, 9 months into the war in Ukraine, the inventories for Javelin launchers, howitzers, and HIMARS look something like this. Now that's got the US military very worried. According to the Wall Street Journal, US and some of its allies are concerned that their stockpiles of weaponry, including some ammunition, are being depleted at an unsustainable rate. One Western official told the journal, and I quote, "We are seeing real, practical problems of making military progress. We are seeing shortages of munitions." Some NATO allies believe that Ukraine will struggle to make major breakthroughs on the battlefield hereon owing to solid Russian defenses. However, some European players disagree. They believe that if the war ends now, the message the Ukrainians would get is that their fight was meaningless. But the US appears less concerned with optics now than it did, say, 2 months ago. Washington has realized that the cost of the war in Ukraine and the resources that Kyiv requires is drilling a hole in American pockets and inventories. There's also the fact that the US remains the most important partner for Ukraine. European countries don't come close to the kind of help Washington has given to Ukraine. There's a real chance of Ukraine succumbing to American pressure and actually giving in to demands of talking with Putin's Russia. Do you think that's where